You clicked. This is a mini PC. It's based around the Core Ultra 9 285H. It's just another mini PC, right? Wrong. This has a trick that no other mini PC has. This can do more PCIe lanes and an external peripheral than any other one. There's a path to expansion. Even though it's a mini PC, this is the Beelink GTI Core Ultra 9 285H. This is the 64 gigabyte of memory, 1 terabyte of storage configuration. It performs surprisingly well. It performs almost like a regular desktop Core Ultra 9, but it's expandable with a PCIe slot. I'll take a closer look. Okay, what do you get in the box? Get some help stuff. So this has been repacked. Don't worry about it too much. Get the bottom here. Got some screws that are removable. Get the front panel. So it's got a 4 microphone array on the front panel, USB Type-C, full-size SD card slot, a Type-A port, a combination headphone microphone port, power LED, and a fingerprint sensor power button at the rear. It's all exhaust. Are these reviews exhausting? Well, you're dealing with Core Ultra 9. This thing has got some significant wattage. It also has a built-in power brick. There's no separate power brick with this thing, which is awesome. You got a Type-C port on the back, a combination headphone microphone at the back, HDMI full-size display port, 2 LAN ports, 2 USB Type-A ports. Beelink is really doing a lot of work for good mini PC design. I mean, it's a metal case. They use it as a heat sink. It's got pretty good airflow. This is nice. It pulls air in from the bottom and exhausts it out the back. If you wanted to use this in a vertical configuration, like a 3D printable foot, you totally could do that. A lot of little design and aesthetic choices that they've made, which are good. Now, taking this apart is incredibly unfun, but it is upgradable. There is an unused M.2 PCIe Gen 4x4 expansion, and then the primary M.2 is also removable and upgradable. The memory, also removable and upgradable. If you want to run 128 gigs in this platform with 2 64 gig DIMMs, you can do it. 2 48 gig DIMMs, 2 32 gig DIMMs as I have it configured. To take it apart, you got to flip the flap for the Wi-Fi antenna. The Wi-Fi antennas are on the bottom of this because it has a metal case, so it might work better in a vertical orientation if you're struggling with the Wi-Fi connection just a little bit. And then you got to take out a couple of the screws for the power supply. 2 that actually hold the power supply and 2 silver screws that actually make an electrical connection. Then you have to take out 3 screws plus a hex bolt on the other side, and then the whole little tray that the power supply is sitting in can hinge up on the speaker cable. Be careful because this is a very delicate ribbon cable. It is somewhat difficult to attach and reattach if you are not familiar with microelectronics. There's a little part of the connector on the motherboard that slides up and down that locks the cable. So don't just yank the cable out, you have to unlock it. You should probably look at like iFixit teardowns if you're interested in doing that kind of thing, because this is a little bit more complicated to tear down than is typical. But it's pretty well assembled, it's pretty well put together. Our power supply, 19 volts, 7.63 amps. So this little box can dissipate a fair bit of heat. Now keep in mind you've got the front USB-C port, which I can see a heatsink on the front USB-C adapter. That's a nice little detail. I'm sure they didn't have to add that, but by doing that, that front USB-C port is going to work a little bit better and provide 15 watts of power, charging, whatever. And then the rear USB-C, that's Thunderbolt 4. So this is a pretty featureful, compact little package. So fans at full load are about 35 dB. It's definitely quite enough to have on the desk, behind you or next to you without being annoying. And the sound is just the sound of air moving. It's not like an annoying whine or a hiss or something like that. It's about 18,000 points at Cinebench R23. It's not bad. Now for the fun part, our built-in NICs, they're 10 gigabit. It's the E610 XT2. Dual 10 gigabit, dual 10 gigabit. It makes me think that you could get creative with the PCIe expansion option, which we'll talk more about in a second. Geekbench is 2892 and 1536 for the multi-core score. Again, if you're out of the loop or you're not read in on the Intel Core Ultra 285, this is a 16-core processor. It is 6 performance cores, 8 efficiency cores, and 2 low-power efficiency cores. Strictly speaking, this is a mobile CPU, which is why it works well in a mini PC. So this is not as much performance as a desktop Core Ultra 9. But at the same time, the performance on those 6 performance cores that you get here are really similar, almost equivalent to the performance cores on a desktop Core Ultra 285. So It's a little bit of a trade-off, but for real-world performance and real-world use cases, 6 performance cores here, even though it's a mini PC, feels a lot like a desktop 285, which is a lot of fun. And for gaming, most games don't really use all that many cores to begin with. Like if you've got 6 performance cores and then you got all the efficiency cores rumbling around in the background, you're basically okay. The problem with gaming though is that this is a ARC 140T. This is about a 30 FPS at 1080p low type of a gaming solution. So this is not, for a mini PC for gaming, this is not for gaming. It's not a slouch. I mean, it's a pretty decent built-in graphics card, but you can spend more and get a mini PC that has more performance. Everybody is really hyped on AMD's APU offerings like Strix Point and Strix Halo. Those will cost more. Those will give you more gaming performance. They'll give you more bandwidth, but for daily productivity use cases, generally it's not. This is about the same speed. Our 8 to 64 benchmarks show 80 gigabytes per second roughly read memory bandwidth with a latency of about 109 nanoseconds. That's actually not the worst that I've seen from these mini PCs. Sometimes these mini PCs go into like the 150 nanoseconds range. And our other performance on 8 to 64, sort of the baseline memory cache benchmark, is about where I'd expect. To give you an idea, a desktop platform at 121 gigabytes per second and 80 nanoseconds latency, this is, if you were to build a system, this is about where you'd land. Blender CPU benchmarks. If we look at our Beelink system here, we can do about 56 samples per minute. It is not the fastest core Ultra 285 at the default settings, but I would note that you can turn the power up in the BIOS and get a little more performance, but also have a little bit more noise. It'll edge toward about 40 dB, give or take. The performance across all 3 of our systems that we looked at that are based on the core Ultra 285H, really similar, 76, 77 samples per minute in Junk Shop. Monster, 114 to 118. Again, the Beelink, because it's a little more power constrained by default, it's running just a little slower, but you can change that in BIOS. If we switch Blender to the GPU, samples per minute goes way up, even though it's a relatively anemic 140T, it's not bad. 221 for Classroom, 224 for Junk Shop, and 376 for Monster. Our Cinebench R24 multi-core score, well, of course, our desktop Z890 build around the 285 non-K, but also unpower constrained, that second power category where it can use 200 watts if it wants to. 1812 versus about 1,000. It's like, oh, the desktop system's way better, not so fast. Single core Cinebench. Look at that, it's basically the same everywhere. I don't know why, I just like CPU-Z. CPU-Z is kind of the same story. Multi-core is like, wow, the desktop's really pulling ahead. And then single core, it's like, oh, single core in CPU-Z does, I think, show a little bit of a more realistic difference at the very top end. You will get a little bit more performance per core, even if you're just running 1 or 2 cores on that desktop 285. But the 285H here, I mean, this is very similar performance. That's why these mini PCs are so impressive. That's why everybody is, it's like, well, can I get away with a mini PC? Is it a good second PC? Is this a good option for this use case or that use case? Because it really doesn't feel any different than a desktop PC for just about everything. Just for giggles, we did Puget Bench, After Effects. These are respectable scores for an iGPU. You could do light photo editing, but I really would recommend a dedicated GPU in order to do that. And just 1080p gaming, Shadow of the Tomb Raider, 1080 high preset, it's like 30 to 36 FPS. Notice also that the desktop CPU falls behind for the iGPU. They figure that the desktop CPU should prioritize everything that's not the GPU. I gotta say, I kind of agree with that. It doesn't make a huge difference in the end, but it is something to keep in mind. Now, Beelink as a differentiator. They have this. So this is basically a proprietary glorified PCI Express connector that's going to give you 8 lanes to this X16 connector here. And then you've got 2 8-pin power connectors. This will give you up to 600 watts of power for the GPU. Also bundled in the case is an M.2 adapter. You can put an M.2 in the dock as well so that you can have a little bit more storage here. I'd recommend you use the M.2 inside rather than the one on the dock. You want all the bandwidth to go to your GPU. It also includes these 2 8-pin pigtails. Now this is 600 watts, and so you might be thinking, oh, 5090 is 600 watts. I could run that with this. it didn't work out for me. I tried that. You've only got the two 8-pin power connectors, and so you would need a Y cable or some kind of an adapter. Don't really recommend that. I did try GPUs up to 450 watts, namely the 4090, and that did work. But the 4090 has a 3 8-pin pigtail, and so I had to use special cables that it didn't come with, but it did work. A 3090, this one has 3, but this card uses less wattage, and so this is much more much safer. You get one of the modified 3090s with 48 gigs of VRAM. Use this as a little AI box. This is a very compact and competent AI box. Now, you'll be happy to know that if you set up the 3090 and you set this thing up with 128 gigabytes of memory, we did a video on running a 1.6 bit per weight quantized version of DeepSeek, an R528 model, on a setup where you've got a 24 gig VRAM plus 128 gigs of system memory, and you're able to run that large AI model on a desktop computer. That will run on this. If this is configured with 128 gigabytes of memory, and you've got a GPU with at least 16 gigabytes of VRAM, this setup will run that model no problem. You want to run, the 70 billion parameter version of Llama at like 10 tokens per second, you can. That version of DeepSeek that we did in the video, you have to go watch the video, I don't want to rehash it here, but you can get upwards of 20-25 tokens per second. Maybe even a little more, depending, but it slows down once you get a larger context, once you've used all your VRAM for context. And so if I'm talking about, a 3090 instead of a 4090, a little hand wavy there, but you can do it. And the fun thing with that is all of those models overrun the 16 or 20 or 24 gigs of VRAM that you have on your GPU. You're literally running the mixture of experts models with some of the layers on the GPU and some of the layers on the CPU. That's now available in LM Studio. It works a little better on Linux. You can do that on Linux, and it works a little better on Linux. This platform supports that really well. If you're just interested in gaming, maybe some experimental AI, I also tested with the 5070 Ti and the 5060 Ti from Asus. The 5070 Ti, I think, is the highest end, most reasonable GPU in the 5000 series that you would actually want to run in this dock. A Blender, obviously, with a 5060 Ti, 1124 in Classroom, 1133 in Junk Shop, and 2049 in Monster. Does this really surprise anybody? But this performance is very similar to what you would get from this GPU in a normal desktop computer. So, for blending and, doing that kind of a workload, not really a difference. Puget Bench, After Effects, Photoshop, Premiere Pro performs really well. It performs right in line with where you'd expect a 5060 Ti to perform. It's not really a lot different in this mini PC conglomeration than it would be in a desktop computer. Shadow of the Tomb Raider, 1080p, 136 FPS. Now our 1% lows are 64. That's a little worrying, and that may have to do with the interface. The 1% lows can be a little bit better in a desktop scenario for reasons, but 136 FPS is right in line with what you get from our desktop Core Ultra 285 with the same graphics card. And there's really not a fall off. It's 8 lanes, keep in mind. There's really not much of a fall off in game performance until you get beyond the 5070 Ti levels of performance. This platform will not really bottleneck a 5070 Ti or a 9070 XT from AMD for that matter. It's not a bad choice. So the bottom line really comes down to price. Does this make sense? I mean, if you're looking to make something portable, something you could take, to college with you, or to take on a road trip, or it's part of a camper solution, this could make a lot of sense because you can use this without the GPU dock when you're traveling or on the road or running from a generator, and this will use relatively low power when it's not stressed. Now, keep in mind, 19 volts, 7, like we can draw up to 200 watts here, but most of the time, no. But if you want a game when you're parked or you have external power, then this becomes an option. There are a surprising number of people in our audience that drive trucks and have asked questions. It's like, what should I get? Like, what kind of a mini ITX system should I build for my truck? And it's this kind of a thing is part of why I've sort of wanted to look at this and say, well, you can think creatively. We've looked at mini PCs where you put a mobile CPU on an ITX motherboard, and this is a complete mini PC, like completely self-contained, but that has a PCIe GPU dock expansion. And if you're wondering, like, well, what about Thunderbolt 4? It has the Thunderbolt 4 port. Can't I use that? And the answer is yes. But this is 8 times the bandwidth of Thunderbolt 4. You could make the argument that this is a naked GPU, sitting in the back of your truck, which is not optimal. I feel like that creative engineering could overcome that kind of a problem. This is also not so many watts, especially if you're running like with the 5060 Ti, that it would be hard on your power generation source in that mobile scenario. For our Thunderbolt 4 testing, I'm a crazy person. We connect an RTX Pro 6000 to the Thunderbolt 4 port, install the NVIDIA RTX drivers, and then we have 96 gigabytes of VRAM to use for AI and everything else. You can game on this, but the interface is kind of slow, and a 5070 Ti is going to outperform, connected this way, is going to outperform our RTX Pro 6000. I did not trust the power delivery of the dock to try the RTX Pro 6000 in the dock because it's an $8,500 GPU, and I don't think they would cover that under warranty. The dock is 600 watts, but it's not really, that doesn't mean you can put a 600 watt GPU in it. 450 watts, fine. 600 watts, I don't think so. And that's pretty much it. That's pretty much all you need to know. The fingerprint sensor works well in Windows. I was not able to get the fingerprint sensor to enroll in Linux. By and large, otherwise, this is not a bad Linux experience. I want to list level 1. That's been a quick look at our Beelink GTI, the Core Ultra 285H edition. If you have any questions or I missed anything or there's a workload you want me to try or something like that, let me know. It would have been nice if it had 2 USB 4 ports as well. I don't know why. Like the front USB port is just USB-C. There's no Thunderbolt 4. I really like this kind of expansion. I wish all mini PCs had a path to PCIe. And can you imagine like getting a home NAS dock? Like here's Beelink. Here's a product idea for you. This same idea, but the mini PC docks with a container that does drives. So you make a dock that has like 5 or 6 3.5-inch bays and like 4 1-lane M.2. It's got the 10 gig NICs already. It's like, boom, there's your home lab solution. And if you want to get a Core Ultra Beelink or you can get an AMD Beelink, it doesn't really matter. It's just, it docks, it's got the controller in there, like probably an AS Media or something. And then you got your 5 or 6 3.5-inch drives and some extra M.2 for storage. And you've got 8 lanes to play with, 12, well, 8 lanes to play with. You'll get it done. That would be a really interesting and innovative home lab project, I think. Anyway, that's enough rambling. I'm Level 1. I'm signing out. You can find me in the Level 1 forums. I'll see you there.